I'm Mick Martin with Statesville Process Instruments. Up on the screen, I hope everybody can see, is our line card. Any needs coming up in the future? We handle all process instrumentation for North and South Carolina. Temperature, pressure, flow, level, we handle it all. So give us a call if you guys have any needs whatsoever. We also have online Tom Harden and Bobby Henson. Together, the three of us cover the Carolinas in outside sales, and we have, of course, April, Scotty, and Crystal, which are our inside sales staff at Statesville Process, and Frank Johnson's online, who is the owner. So that being said, we've got Mick White with Gefran as our guest presenter. And Mick will be discussing melt pressure transducers and IOLINK technology. I hope you guys enjoy it. Mick, go ahead.
I appreciate it, Nick. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Like Nick said, my name is Mick White, and I'm a regional sales manager at Gefran. I work for a company that is headquartered in northern Italy. We manufacture a wide variety of products there, including many types of sensors for process. We manufacture all kinds of temperature control products and SCR power controls. 600 amps, three-phase at this time is our high-end limit, but we'll be at 1,000 amps this year. So lots of things we build there. I work for the U.S. subsidiary of Gefran. So our U.S. headquarters is in North Andover, Massachusetts. There we have a factory that makes a lot of melt transducers. So I'll talk a little more about that. I cover a territory for Gefran that is Virginia to Texas. I represent Gefran in both their sensor and their controls division, which is relatively unique. Most of my coworkers do one or the other. So I cover about 2.5 million square kilometers by planes, trains, and automobiles. And I am going to share my screen now. I hope everyone can see the front page of my melt pressure brochure. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a very specific slice of our business and technology. Melt pressure transducers are very important to Gefran. We make a lot of them, and we consider ourselves specialists in the field. We have a variety of models, many more than we did even a few years ago. So I will highlight for you some of the different products that we produce within this category. And then we're going to talk about IOLINK and how we've adopted that technology to fit our melt technology. So in melt pressure transducers, there are generally 4 designs. There is a rigid stem with a flexible sheath. Those 2 things plus a thermocouple. And then there are melt pressure sensors made with an exposed capillary typically for space constrained areas. You can see under the E there in this picture, there are many outputs available from a Gefran melt pressure transducer, including intrinsic safety with an ATEX rating. It's probably good to announce here and now that at the end of the year, we'll be releasing a whole new line of melt sensors that are FM approved for polymer and petrochemical use. And we're very excited about that. One of my next jobs will be to take over Houston. So under the K, what you see there are some different fill technologies, and I'll explain quickly because it will help us understand later. Gefran fills melt pressure transducers with some different materials. Mercury, of course, it is the optimal substance to use in this type of application for these sensors. It's very reactive in the way we like it to be. And we make thousands and thousands of sensors filled with mercury, as does all of our competitors. But we're an international company, and we, more than anyone, realize that mercury will eventually be eradicated from industry. So we're well prepared for that. We have alternatives to mercury if and when you, the customer, ever cares to investigate. For customers that make FDA-approved packaging materials, we have an oil that we fill with. We also have sodium potassium, or NAC. I'm pretty high on sodium potassium use. I tend to believe customers would like to eradicate mercury if possible, and if given the opportunity, they'll seriously consider it. The sodium potassium fill doesn't change anything about the way this customer uses the melt sensor. It simply removes the mercury from the environment. The sodium potassium is generally considered safe in all applications, including food applications. So there's no change for the customer, and there's no change in price either. So anyone out there that has mercury fill sensors in their plant that would like to consider an alternative, just know that sodium potassium is out there. And we actually make sensors in mercury, oil, and sodium potassium fill in Boston, here in the United States. So we have full manufacturing capabilities right now and have not had any shutdown at all. So we're making a lot of melt sensors, and they're readily available. Impact is a relatively special melt sensor. It is a solid state device. We use some special technology, again, to create a sensor that drops into the hole where many existing sensors would drop. It has all of the same accuracy and repeatability characteristics, in some cases improved upon, and doesn't have a fill at all. So the main reason people are looking at impact sensors is that it has a diaphragm that is many times, 10, 15 times thicker than a standard diaphragm. So in highly abrasive or corrosive instances, in places where melt sensors can't be removed from the process for months at a time, an impact sensor is quickly becoming the sensor of choice in these places. And then, of course, we do have heart capability on a wide variety of designs as well. So now that you know what we do with melt, both here and abroad, I want to bring your attention to a new technology we've adopted. Industry 4.0 is something some of you may be familiar with already. And rather than reading you this paragraph, you're welcome to read it yourself. I always explain Industry 4.0 as the maturing of manufacturing processes so that they are lifted up to the cloud, for streamlining of manufacturing itself, for data collection purposes and predictive maintenance and just-in-time inventories, and all kinds of ways it can be affected. But if you have not already been approached with Industry 4.0, I encourage you to look into some articles that will reference it. It's, I believe it's the future of automated manufacturing, and a lot of products from companies like Gefran will be geared toward connectivity. Even some of our panel mount DIN size controllers are now, not only do they feature Modbus RTU, but we have a quarter DIN size now that has an Ethernet port and can be a TCP slave. We just have a craving to pass tremendous amounts of data in our process world now up the chain into controlling and data collecting in the SCADA system. So with that in mind, IOLINK is a standardized technology that allows us to do this. And I'm going to tell you some of the reasons that IOLINK is adopted in general and why it will benefit you to use Gefran's melt IOLINK sensors. First of all, anybody that's been in a plant for a while knows that it seems like every single sensor in the plant has its own special cable that you have to order with it. And if you tear it, you have to get a new one. And sometimes that's hard to trace down. IOLINK cabling is all standardized. So it's all 5-pin M12 connector cabling. A huge relief to a large plant that has a lot of dissimilar devices, photoelectrics and proximity sensors, and yes, melt sensors and lots of other products. All of these types of sensors have IOLINK versions. And we'll talk more about how all this ties together. But the IOLINK cabling itself, one of the benefits to having this technology is that you have a far fewer number of cables you have to manage and inventory. IOLINK devices are plug and play devices. And what that means is that when you, and I'll use the instance of a melt pressure transducer here. If you install a melt sensor into a port where one already existed, IOLINK will look at that sensor, confirm that it is the right sensor to be in the space that you plugged it in, and then, provided that it is the right sensor, it will configure it and get that sensor ready for whatever was going on prior to its replacement. So you can imagine that you could send an inexperienced person to do this, and they would not be responsible for configuring the sensor or making sure that the auto zero was set. These things are done automatically once IOLINK is in place. It passes a lot of information. Cyclic information like process data, the information basically that we're getting now from a melt sensor's 4 to 20 milliamp output, as well as some status values about that process data. But we're also now going to be able to convey acyclic information specifically about the device itself. What kind of device it is. Is it the one we expect to be there, for instance? How is it configured? There's auxiliary data and diagnostic data available. I'll show you some examples. And because it's connected in the way it is, events and alarms can be recorded easily as well. Identification parameters include the bullet points here. You can see that if you buy a Gefran IOLINK sensor, you will immediately be able to access through IOLINK the company name, the product, the code. You'll actually be able to, there's a file called an IODD file that will contain all of this information, as well as a picture of the product so that someone could visually confirm what they're looking at, and a data sheet so that they can look at some of the specifications and possible settings. These are examples of configuration parameters that you can pass through IOLINK. Thresholds for alarming, peaks of pressure and temperature, and then, of course, configuring the unit for any specific use it had, providing it was programmable in some way, and the auto zero function. I will explain quickly that in a lot of competitor products, you will have a trim pot to use, or maybe you just use an offset inside a control system to manage the temperature drift that occurs when you install a sensor and bring the system up to temperature. Gefran solves this problem using a magnetic pen and target. So on our melt sensors, we generally provide a small target and a magnetic pen. If you hold the mag pen onto the sensor for 3 seconds, it will zero that sensor out at temperature. It's a very easy way to zero it out and get the best reading you can from it. IOLINK brings that even an easier process, simply doing the auto zero automatically through your system or by command from a control panel. Diagnostic parameters like these can be provided as well. A lot of these products have safety relay or certified safety analog output configurations, and you're able to monitor all of that as well. And finally, auxiliary parameters. And these so far have been some of the most popular parameters that people are interested in looking at, actually, is the recording of max pressure and temperature, as well as the recording of the working time of the sensor. So the first two are obvious. The third is very interesting. Because of the way IOLINK works, we're able to tell when that sensor was installed, how long it spent in duty, when it was taken out, and all of the information that you'd be required to put it back into place. So this will inform all of us, Gefran, the distributor, the customers, about the life that sensor has had. And you'll have a lot more information to go on about whether or not to believe you have reached suitable life, for instance, for the sensor you purchased. IOLINK sensors are rangeable. So in the past, I have been of the mind that a rangeable sensor was a delicate matter. If someone that was inexperienced was asked to go put a sensor in that had a 3-to-1 turn down, you might well have a sensor operating improperly as a result of the installation. But our Gefran IOLINK melt sensors have a 3-to-1 turn down so that you, Mr. Customer, can manage far fewer codes within your stock list. A 10,000 PSI sensor can be turned down for use down to 3,000 PSI with no loss in accuracy, repeatability, that kind of thing. So far fewer products to consider, far fewer to manage an inventory for a large plant. Functional safety certifications are available. PL level C certification has already been available from Gefran. We now offer through our IOLINK products a SIL 2 version and a PLD version. So you can have a relay output that is settable from 10 to 99% of process range, or you can have a certified analog output that constantly provides you a rangeable output. In either case, you're able to use that information to decide on whether or not to or when to shut down a pressurized process. Excuse me. That's a representation of an IODD file. If anyone's curious, that IODD IO device description file is the file that contains the picture and the data sheet and all the information specific to the sensor. For those of you who are not already familiar with IOLINK, what you require is an IOLINK specific sensor, a cable that I showed you earlier, and an IOLINK master. So this is an example of a master device that we carry. We have Turk products that we're offering in both the box and the cabling. For plants that already employ IOLINK in other places, they will no doubt have already chosen a standard, and we invite them to use any of them. The specialness of the box is in the protocol, not in its ability to accept one brand or another of sensor. So whether you have a standardized IOLINK box and cabling in your plant, or you need to experiment for the first time through Statesville Process and Gefran, we're happy to provide the products. But as you can see, it's a multi-port device. All of your sensors, Gefran and otherwise, would go into this bank of ports. Each port will be configured to look for and only choose a specific sensor that it was assigned with. So as we described earlier, you can't just put any sensor in any port. The IOLINK will say, hey, I don't recognize this pressure range, or this product code is wrong. And it should eliminate quite a bit in terms of accident and mistake. So that's the end of my IOLINK presentation, gentlemen. I definitely wasn't going to keep you for an hour, much less an hour and a half. If anyone has any questions now, I can entertain IOLINK questions now. As a matter of fact, I'll just go ahead. If there are any, they'll be hot and immediate. So does anyone have a question specific to IOLINK and to Gefran melt sensors?
Hey, Mick, this is Frank.
Yes, sir.
What's your percentage of the sensors you sell that are IOLINK in the United States?
Oh, Frank, I appreciate the question. This is a brand new technology. It was only given to me at the beginning of the year. I studied for some weeks before I started releasing it to distribution and to customers. So I have only since been, say, Valentine's Day, been presenting this. So we have very little sales right now. We're just promoting the technology within extrusion. And again, though some of your customers, Frank, may have IOLINK in other parts of their plant, IOLINK sensors for melt pressure we are the only ones that have it, and it is brand new. So for every sensor we sell, it will be because someone purposefully considered it and adopted it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mick.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? Anybody have a question about IOLINK and melt sensors? If interest comes about after we speak, and I hope it does, please contact Nick Martin or Bobby or Tom and ask them to bring to you the information necessary. We can share this presentation I've done today. We can do something new for a group. We're happy to talk about trials so that if you want to experiment with something like this, we can make it affordable. I'm happy to do all I can from Atlanta, Georgia, to make sure everybody takes advantage of what is here, which is for the same price. Basically, the IOLINK melt sensors are just a few percentage points higher than a standard melt sensor. So for a few pennies more, you'll be collecting far more data from your melt sensors and hopefully be able to limit downtime, prevent mistakes in maintenance, and have better product on the back end. Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, I'll turn it back over to Nick, and I sure do appreciate everyone's attention today.
And in the future, if there are any questions whatsoever on Gefran or anything else that we carry here at Statesville Process, you can contact any one of us, and we're more than happy to help you out. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance, and everybody have a great day.